What I wanted to say is this is a continuation of what we've already begun. We had worked from Aries and we finished last time with Virgo. And what's worth mentioning is that what is being offered in these webinars is really the ABCs of esoteric astrology. Of course, we can go a lot deeper and a lot more esoteric than what we have. But I think this is a wonderful beginning because it does deal with the exoteric rulers, which is what traditional astrology tends to deal with. And then we do spiral it up and look at the esoteric rulers. As you know, we're not dealing with the hierarchical rulers, but even so, astrology can be expanded to look at it macrocosmically as well, and to look at it in terms of our planetary logos and how it interrelates with the other gods, so to speak, in our heavenly sphere. The other solar systems, the one about whom not may be said, the Great Bear, and so on. There is so much more that can be discussed, and this will be presented later on as soon as these foundations are already laid out. So we're going to move on, but before we do, I'm going to open this up to any questions of what we have done up to this point before we move on to the next sign, which is Libra. So if you've got yourself on self-mute and if you want to speak, please do so now.
I'm good.
Okay. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about Libra. For those that are somewhat familiar with the chart itself, or with what we call a blank chart that doesn't have any planets placed in them, there is always that horizontal line, right? That I said on the left side of it is where we see the ascendant. Well, if you look at the glyph of Libra, the bottom line here can easily represent that horizontal line. And all the other 6 signs that we have dealt with have been going from the left side all around to the right side of that flat chart. Let's see if I can pull it up here, if I have it in here. And then I can show you better. I don't really see it here right now. Okay, well, you remember that we did this in the before, so you have a sense of what the flat chart looks like. And everything we've done so far has been in the night part of the chart, which is the subjective side of the chart, and that has been beneath the horizon. So now we move into the 7th sign, and the 7th sign is just above the horizon. So we see the sun self starting to rise above the horizon, and that's how we get that glyph, that upper part of the glyph right here of Libra. That's the sun self starting to rise now above the horizon. And what does that indicate to us? That this is really the first sign that starts to deal with others besides oneself only. If everything up till now has been about the self and the growth interiorly, or what we call the dark side of the night side of the chart, now we move into the sunnier part. So we're starting to deal with others. And you will see that the rest of the signs really are about how we move in the outer world, as opposed to it being subjective. So now it becomes much more exoteric, or outside of oneself. Everything that was across and up and down, originally we started out with Aries. Aries is on the cardinal sign, or rather on the cardinal cross, and the sign opposite it is Libra. So Libra is also on the cardinal cross, and it is an air sign. And if you remember when we dealt with Gemini, there were no animals involved. It was the twins. Now we're dealing with Libra. There are no animals involved. It is a woman who is blinded and holding the scales of justice in her hands, generally, is the way it's depicted. So again, we see more of a human symbol as opposed to animals. It's an interesting thing to consider that even in Aquarius, which is the only other air sign, it's not about an animal again. It's about a human being holding the pitcher of water on his shoulder and then pouring it out, pouring the water out to human beings, to all human beings. So the three air signs do not deal with animals. You kind of wonder why, don't you? Air, as we know, denotes the mental part of the human being, the mind. And what is it that we in this round, in this time, are supposed to be working on? We're supposed to be working on the development of the mind. We're in the fifth subrace, the fifth round. So we're working on number 5, and number 5, if you remember, is the ray of the mental vehicle. So all these air signs depict a human being, and manas, which is what we call the mental vehicle, the first 3 letters represent man. So man is meant to start to use the mind. And so it's an interesting thing that all these glyphs and all these signs are represented not by animals, but by human beings. The most important thing that I will offer with respect to Libra is that it is about right human relations. And the word right here is a very, very important word. Libra tends to want, of course, balance and equilibrium. We kind of all know that, right? And as a result of that, in order to maintain the balance, it seeks to find ways to do that. How does it do that? It usually cooperates, it pleases, it goes along with, it tends to be diplomatic, and usually it's for the sake of not rocking the boat or maintaining the status quo. That Libra is very good at that, very good at maintaining the status quo, because it might throw off that balance, the balance as the Libran perceives it, or the equilibrium as the Libra perceives it. That's a very key thing. It's as the Libran perceives it. It's not necessarily the right thing, but it's the way that individual perceives it. So some of the strengths of Libra is a lot of what we just mentioned: diplomacy, a strong sense of cooperation, and a sense of justice. They are peace loving, and even though it's a strength, it can be very, very many times a deterrent. It tends to be to have a strong sense of justice, and I think the scales indicate that. And it is ruled exoterically by Venus. Well, we know that Venus is the goddess of beauty and love, so therefore it would bring to the Libran a real strong sense of artistry, of refinement. There's a suave approach to the Libran, and these are still all strengths. And now we look at some of the weaknesses. Because the Libran tends to weigh, and that's what the scales do represent, there tends to sometimes be indecisiveness, the weighing this to that. The outer form is very important to Libran, so it tends to judge what the outer appearance is. So there's judgmentalism. And as I have said, over compliance, over compromise for the sake of peace at any price. Now, as I said, this is the first social sign. And in Libra, Venus represents the one or those whom we love. And so in Libra, Venus is also about our loves, about our partners, about how we love and who we love, and the need for partners. So there's a dependency sometimes on a partner. Libran can, I say the word manipulate, and I don't necessarily mean it as a negative. It's a third ray energy for Libra. It's the only one that the Tibetan actually gives us. And I do believe that there are more. There's, I think, a really strong second ray to Libra, and there's a strong fourth ray. Although where to place them, whether it's a soul or whether it's a hierarchical or rather monadic, you know what, it's really a guesstimate, so I won't say much more to that. But all we can go with is that the Tibetan has given us the third ray for Libra. So how does that third ray show itself? Well, the Librans do not move in a straight line. And by that I mean they don't necessarily say it like it is. They'll find ways to be very diplomatic in the way something is said, so that in that way they can be manipulative because they don't really want to rock the boat. So they're going to manipulate the situation to such a way, in such a way that they can get others to do it for them or to say it for them until they get their way. Kind of know what I mean here? So there is that ability of the Libran to not say it the way it is. See, they want to avoid conflict at any cost. And that many times means not being direct. So I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. What are those two great lines of force? That's a question to really think about. What are those two great lines of force? And choosing the middle way, because Libra is considered the middle, being in the middle. We'll look at, just make sure I have, well, before I do that, let me just pull out Venus as its exoteric ruler. And I think we've pretty well covered that. In Libra, it's about love and another. It's about attraction and who we are attracted to. So the desire nature plays an important role here. And of course, that desire, if we spiral it up, has a lot to do with love. And Venus gives us pleasure. And there's pleasure in being loved and in loving and being liked. So esoterically, we are ruled here by Uranus. It's not the greatest slide that I have for an esoteric, but we do kind of see some of the outer planets here. Uranus. Now, what do we know? Now, I think this is the first time we've come across Uranus, so let's talk a little bit about what Uranus is. Uranus is one of those planets that's very, very unpredictable. If we were to look out in the heavens, we would see that the head center of Uranus actually is directly pointing to the sun. So can you imagine the energy that it receives directly into the head center? So there's tremendous amount of power and energy associated with Uranus. And that's why we have this lightning here, this lightning bolt, because when Uranus does act, it acts like lightning. It's tremendous amount of light that comes down and is so powerful, just like lightning hitting a tree, hitting the ground. Because it is a new planet, relatively new, and it was discovered, since its discovery, a lot of new things were discovered almost simultaneously when it was discovered, like electricity and a few other things of that nature. It brings about things that are different and change, and therefore you have this idea of the planet of change, and the change can bring about revolutions. It can bring about renovating, doing something in a different way. It can reform that which was or is and redesign something to lift it out of its existing paradigm or concept. When we are affected by Uranus, and that's usually as a result of it transiting and affecting something in your chart, it's like out of the blue. It's totally unpredictable, and that's why we have this individual here standing on its head, totally upside down, unpredictable. We have a sort of a hippie kind of person, again, revolutionary, being totally different and calling for freedom. It's the planet of freedom, wanting not to be chained, not to be limited like Saturn tends to limit, but to be free and able to uh, do that which is different, which is eccentric, which is radical. And therefore, in many ways, because it comes in like a lightning bolt and filled with kinetic energy, like the electrical energy, it must be grounded in order to be dispersed. It repatterns, as a result, that which it touches. When it hits the grounds in a country, it brings change to the economy, change to the political systems, or to the sociological systems. Because it is about power and will, there's a first ray quality to Uranus. Uranus brings the will into being. To express one's will in a way that leaves a mark on the world, that leaves an impression, changes in one's environment. Well, what can that do? It can certainly bring about eccentric behavior or change for the change of sake, radical or irrational behavior, as well as absolute brilliance and genius. And that's why we have this light bulb here, because it can bring that originality, that light into being. Now, where it lands is a different thing. So therefore, we can say that it's intuitive, it's insightful. And when it's in a good aspect to a planet of the mind, it can bring quickness, just like lightning. Real quickness, understanding, and correct analysis. It can also bring with it a depth of understanding and direct cognition of the matter at hand. So, Uranus, as an esoteric ruler in Libra, how do we see that? Why do we think that Uranus is a good combination with Libra? We saw Venus. Now, we didn't mention when we looked at Venus that Venus is also a planet of the mind. On the exoteric level, it's a Ray 2 planet, which is about love, and it's about comforts, and it's about desire. But on a more esoteric level, Venus is about the mind. It's a Ray 5 planet. So in what way here is Uranus related to Libra? And I'm going to open that up for your comments. What do you think? How do you think Uranus plays well with Libra? Having just heard all these different things that it does. Any thought? It doesn't matter what you say. There's no right or wrong answer here. I guess I'll have to fill in the space. Okay, in Uranus, in Libra, Uranus can shake up the existing status quo, right? It's a mover and a shaker, and it can overturn Libra's way of wanting to keep things really smooth, really comfortable for itself. With Libra being an air sign, Uranus is oftentimes considered also a planet of the mind, because it can bring with it that intuition that we talked about, that insight, that inventiveness. Well, it takes the mind in order to be inventive. It takes the mind in order to be ingenious. and it can lead to a very keen mind, an intuitive mind, and one that can come up with different is a Uranian word, different ideas. So we can see how in Libra, Uranus would lead to being able to change the status quo. And how important is that to Libra? It's very, very important, because Libra doesn't like that kind of change. So, any more thoughts that you would like to talk about with Libra? Oh, come on, guys. There's got to be some thoughts here. There's got to be questions. This is interactive, remember? Libra also, now we're getting into some more esoteric stuff. Libra also is known as the hub of the wheel, and it is in Libra that reorientation takes place. Some lifetime in Libra, the individual gets reoriented, and instead of going around the zodiac in a clockwise direction, it somehow reorients itself and starts to move in an anti-clockwise direction. And it doesn't happen all in one time. It is a process, and a process that happens over many lives. But it is initiated in Libra, Libra being so much associated with the middle point and the hub of the wheel. All right, we're going to move on to Scorpio, which is the 8th sign. And one of the things to look at is the glyph. I always believe that if you study the glyph, you learn so much about the various signs. This is not the best depiction of the glyph. I like to see the arrow coming up as if there is a line under the bottom of those M loops, and then an arrow needs to come up above that. And why do I say that? Because we see all that energy in the M held together and then coming up and shooting up like an arrow, because it is ruled by Mars. And Mars, as you know, the glyph does have an arrow. Everybody knows the glyph for Mars these days. So this can be looked at as the man's man's private parts. These are the testicles, and this would be the penis ejecting that energy, coming up and out through the pent-up energy associated with Scorpio. So that's one way of looking at it. The letter M definitely is seen here in Scorpio, as it was in Virgo, and in Virgo it's about matter, and in Scorpio, look where the eyes are. The eyes are down. They're down into the depths, also down into matter. One was with a substance, and therefore it was an earth sign, and here it is in water and looking down into the depths that lies within the waters. Waters can be very deep, and there's a fixity here in Scorpio. And we know about fixity, right? We discussed a little bit about fixity. Fixity is immovable. It tends to not like change. It tends to like to maintain that which it knows. So how do we see some of the strengths associated with Scorpio?
Excuse me.
Yes?
Yeah. After Leo, isn't the sign Virgo?
Yes. Did we not cover Virgo last
Did we?
time? Did we not cover Virgo
Oh, did
last
we
time?
skip around?
No, I don't think we did. We went from Leo to Virgo,
Oh, okay.
and we
I'm
stopped.
sorry.
That's okay. We stopped at
For
Virgo.
some reason, I'm looking at my birth chart, and I thought the horizontal line there is not Libra.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. Could you repeat that?
I was looking at my birth chart, and I thought you said the Libra was on the above the horizontal line, and I'm looking at my chart, and it's not.
Okay, the reason being, I'm sorry I don't have a flat chart right in front of me right now, is that these 12 signs move, depending on what is on the ascendant. Depending on what is on the ascendant will determine where these signs line up. In the 12 houses, so to speak, or these 12 sections. When I say that it is above the horizon, that is if we start with Aries as the ascendant. If we start with the normal or the ideal, I don't know if the word ideal is not right, but if we start with Aries on the ascendant, then the seventh sign would be Libra, and that would be above the horizon. So even if you have another sign that's above that horizon, you might have Taurus there, you might have Leo there, you might have Aquarius there, it doesn't matter. Still, the energy that is underlying that environment is still a Libran quality energy, irrespective of what sign you personally have on that seventh cusp, or right above the horizon. Cusp is that line that is at the horizon. Is that a little clearer?
You said that Libra is going to still influence the seventh house no matter where it is on the chart?
No matter what sign is in the seventh house. Right. There's a Libran energy underlying that environment. You see, every house is an environment. Every house is a location of where you live that quality of that house. So in the seventh house, it's all about relationships. It's about how you relate to others, how you relate to partners, and so on. That's a very Libran thing, irrespective of what sign for you finds itself in that particular house. What sign do you have in that house?
Cancer.
You have Cancer. So the Cancer overlay of family and holding everybody in a protective environment finds itself in the seventh house, and which is a Libran house. So relationships become extremely important within family, because Libra is all about relationships and how I relate to another. See, Cancer is not so much about relationships. Cancer is more about protecting and keeping the environment in a very safe and comfortable, protective whole. A whole. Cancer is about the whole. And the whole is the family, the home, the group, the ashram. That's what Cancer is all about. Well, Libra is about another and about how I relate to another. So that would bring that flavor into you with Cancer.
Okay.
Okay, so we're moving on to Scorpio. Its place is the eighth. And if we started with Aries on the horizon, then the eighth sign would be Scorpio. And in our chart, it doesn't matter at this point what is there. It could be any sign that's there, but the underlying flavor of that particular environment, home, would have a scorpionic quality to it. So Scorpio is a water sign. And waters tend to normally run deep. If you look out into a lake or an ocean, the water is very deep. And we don't know what is lurking in the bottom. If you look down, all you see is darkness. You don't know what's deep down in the water. So what Scorpio is good at, it's good at being able to hone in to that which lies underneath and try to bring it up to the surface, to the light of day, which is the soul, and then try to look at that which needs to be addressed. And in the doing of that, maybe even bring death to that which is worn out, to that which doesn't work anymore, whether it be a pattern, whether it be a mode of behavior, whether it be a characteristic that you don't need anymore. It can bring death to it. And we'll see how the rulers can do all of that. But primarily, if I was to give you the purpose of Scorpio, that's what it would be. It's to be able to look deep into that which lurks in the sub or unconscious, which is deep in the waters, try to bring it to the surface, and then deal with it. Deal with it in the light of day. Deal with it through the energy of the soul. And that's why it's called warrior. Because in order to do that, it takes strength, it takes courage. It's like opening up a can of worms, right? You never know what is lurking there and what's going to come up. What tends to lurk in the subconscious are things we don't want to deal with. That's basically, saying it in a nutshell. It's things that are unconscious or patterns of behavior or events that have happened that we don't want to deal with. So we bury it. We push it under the rug, and therefore we don't have to deal with it. Well, Scorpio invites you to look at those patterns, to look at that behavior, and to deal with it. And that's why so many people with a strong Scorpio make the best therapists, because they can hold your hand and they can go down into the depths with you to help you bring those things up to the surface so that you can deal with it. See, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, exoterically, according to the Tibetan. And Mars, as we know, is about energy, it's about motivation, it's direct, it's the god of war. Well, you're basically doing battle with that which is the hidden, with that which is esoteric, it's that which isn't obvious. It's so well hidden that you need to bring it to the surface. And so it requires that kind of strength, that kind of motivation, that kind of energy to do that. Now, we are also told that Pluto is a co-ruler in this time, in this cycle that we live in, with Scorpio. Well, what does Pluto do? Pluto is the god of the underworld. Hey, we just talked about the underworld. So Pluto, a first-ray planet, will bring death to that which is to anything. So it's about control, it's about will, it's about death. And what, again, in Scorpio we want to do is we want to bring things up to the surface and deliver it that blow of death if it so needs it. So again, those both are co-rulers looking at it from an exoteric perspective. So why do we use so many wonderful words associated with let me see if we have on this slide anything better. No. We have wonderful words associated with Scorpio as its strength. Transformative power. Well, why do we even use the word transformative? Because you are transforming. You are changing that which needs to be dealt with. And it has, like this particular image here, it has the penetrating ability to penetrate into the depths, to have the eyes, look down here, the eyes, to look deep into whatever needs to be looked at. So it's very penetrating, it's very determined, and it can investigate. So we have Sherlock Holmes, the investigator. It can probe, and it can lead to science as well, dealing with science, because science, as we know, likes to penetrate and probe into the minutia through a telescope or a microscope or whatever instrument is being used. It can be very passionate. It is, after all, a water sign, motivated through Mars. One of the things we know about Scorpio is that it tends to be private. It does not wear its emotions, water, on its sleeve. It's very hard to know what is lurking in the mind or behind the Scorpio look. So Scorpios tend to be secretive. They tend to keep things to themselves. They're not that free to share how they feel. And many Scorpio people don't even know how they feel. Because after all, it runs deep, those waters, and nobody knows what's in those depths. They themselves don't know. So it's a bit of a test for Scorpios to try to come up with and to become aware of their own feelings and what it is that they need to deal with. It's got the eagle eye here, the eagle. Why the eagle? Because there's 3 levels to Scorpio. That's why I love this sign. It's just so it's just such a strong positive sign for me. I have a son who has double Scorpio, and when I first started to learn about Scorpio, I was just enthralled with some of the deeper understanding of Scorpio. On the lowest turn of the spiral for Scorpio, the scorpion here would be the image that was used. And what can it do? Well, it can definitely poison and bring death to someone through its scorpionic abilities. So Scorpio is oftentimes associated with destructive, jealous, vengeful, manipulative, violent behavior. And so, therefore, as an umbrella, we would say that it is associated with the mafia. Do we see how the mafia can do things in a very underhanded, destructive kind of way? I would say anything subversive is very scorpionic on its lowest turn of the spiral. I would think that a lot of advertising that manipulates us and gets us to purchase and do things in an underhanded way, or in a way that is not that out there and clear, could be very scorpionic. So that's one way of looking at Scorpio. And then we can spiral it up. The next level of Scorpio, a slightly better level, would be the eagle. And the eagle is so much associated with the eagle eye. And what is the eagle eye all about? It has the ability to fly high and to see its prey really down below. And when it sees its prey, it can whoosh right down and pick up its prey. It has the ability to be so aware of that prey in amongst everything that it sees from so far away that it can hone in and take its prey. And that eagle eye is why many times the eyes of a very strong Scorpio are very seductive, they are very penetrating, and they can look into your heart and know what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and therefore can either use it for their own purposes, like a Charles Manson who did. Charles Manson was known as the one who could manipulate and use his followers for his selfish purposes. Or you can be a therapist and use that eagle eye ability to go down into the depths and help another come through and be triumphant on the other side. So you can see how that works. It always depends on where someone is at in their point of evolution. How evolved is that person? How is that individual using the Scorpio energy? And on the higher turn of the spiral, the symbol for Scorpio is the phoenix. And what is the phoenix known for? It's known for rebirth, for being able to come out of the ashes and be born again. And that's what Scorpio and the transformative powers of Scorpio are all about. Being able to come through, and therefore by changing, by bringing death to that which doesn't work, you are in fact changing and transforming yourself. A therapist will then be transforming another once that other can recognize and see the various things that he or she needs to deal with. Okay, and so I just have here some information on Pluto. Pluto right now is the furthest planet from the sun. Its orbit is the largest orbit. In other words, it takes the longest amount of time to circumvent that sun, and therefore it doesn't get a lot of light. Hence, we call it the Lord of the underworld, or the darkness associated with death. Pluto is secretive. It's the hidden. It's that which does not want to be accepted or known. As the same as in Scorpio, that which lurks in the depths of the waters. Pluto is also the unearther, delving deep and dredging up that which lies beneath. Well, we pretty well covered that. And Pluto will also bring the process of resurrection, lifting the dead within us to life, much like the phoenix, right? The rebirth or the transformation. And see what the next one is. Yeah, here we see the warrior. Now, the esoteric ruler of Scorpio is also Mars. It's also Mars. So, how do we spiral up Mars? How do we make Mars appear to be more of an esoteric ruler? Because it's not a sacred planet, Mars. Like the Earth, and like Pluto, it's not a sacred planet. So, in what way does it take on that esoteric or that soul-like quality? Well, it brings, first of all, a tremendous amount of courage to the individual needing to deal with the the qualities that are hidden. It brings conviction, forthrightness, and fearlessness. The fearlessness to be able to delve into those depths, and power, the power that is necessary. Being able then to stand up for others, even in the face of harm to oneself. That takes a tremendous amount of strength and courage, which Mars can offer. And so, as a lot of this we've already covered, Mars needs to be looked at both from the exoteric and the esoteric ruler of Scorpio. And again, it always depends on where someone is at and their point of evolution. There's a few other things to consider with Scorpio. Scorpio, because of water, in one of the images that we had here, we saw a mirror here. Right. Because Scorpio can bring about a tremendous amount of illusions and deception and lack of clarity, because things are seen really through water in a way, through one's emotions. So there isn't the clarity that is so necessary. It brings about or requires a lot of testing. Testing is done in Scorpio. You are being tested. And I have done talks on Scorpio, and there are various levels of testing that I know that in the Labor of Hercules, BL will go into that when she covers Scorpio. And so you can see the three different levels of the various tests. We have 9 different tests to deal with. So testing is in Scorpio. Deception is in Scorpio, but in the long run, one can be tremendously triumphant in Scorpio. Warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. Scorpio is a fourth ray sign. Fourth ray is about the opposites. It is about the battle. Always fourth ray brings in a battle because one wants to find that point of harmony. One wants to find that point of evenness and balance, which is, after all, the soul. So please, questions, comments before we actually start moving on.
I missed what you said about water.
Well, because of the fact that Scorpio is related to water, there isn't the clarity, and therefore it brings with it deception, illusion, not a clear understanding many times. And that's one of the tests in Scorpio, is to be able to go through that, through the waters, to be able to understand and see. That's why you need to bring things out of the water into the light, because in the light you will see. Okay?
Okay.
Eva,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that, like you, you and your son, I have a husband with everything in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite interesting because he's one of those people who can just see right through you. You know, he he always gets to the heart of the matter when he does it, and he doesn't necessarily do it in a nice way sometimes. They can be think they know everything that's going on, and it's not all that easy to live with. But the potential of the sign of that phoenix, of mastering the tests, is just something really good to look forward to. And they need that. They need that ability to dig way down, to penetrate the facade, and see what's really happening. So it's quite an interesting sign and quite an interesting one to live with. I had an older brother who had it also, and I remember my mother always going through the house muttering, "Dirty, rotten Scorpio," because he definitely had a mind of his own. I think he put a new twist on the terrible twos for her.
There's another quality very much associated with Scorpio. You may have experienced that if you're surrounded with Scorpio, and that is sarcasm. Sarcasm, a wry sense of humor, like a twist to things. It's never that direct. Well, it's direct, but the sarcasm always used to blow me away.
Yes, there's that in spades.
Okay. All right. So thank you for the offerings, and if there's something else that wants to be offered,
Hello, Eva. Can I ask a question?
please do.
Hello.
Yes, please do.
All you've spoken about Scorpio, and you say it's a fourth ray sign. Can we then assume that all those factors relate also to the fourth ray as well?
When you say all these factors, what specifically are you referring to?
Well, not specifically anything, but just generally all the positives and negatives, if you like. Can we say then that they are all, if we look at Scorpio then, are we also looking at the fourth ray?
Yes, in Scorpio, the fourth ray shows itself not the way it does in Taurus. See, in Taurus, which is the opposite of Scorpio, it is about beauty. Fourth ray is about beauty and harmony. Well, in Scorpio, it's about the battle. In Scorpio, it's about doing battle. And with Mars there, it isn't about beauty at all. And so, how fourth ray plays itself in Scorpio is one, understanding the human condition. In understanding the human condition and understanding how another person behaves and moves, you can look into their heart, so to speak, and know exactly what to say, how to manipulate that individual for their good or for yours, because you understand the human condition without even consciously knowing that you do. The fourth ray relates to humanity. And therefore, in that way, you would say it's fourth ray. So let's just see if we can summarize how the fourth ray shows itself in Scorpio. Fourth ray is about the battle. Always fourth ray battles. It's never an easy placement because it seeks harmony through conflict. Well, if there's conflict, it's never easy. Through strife, it's never easy. Through pain and suffering, it's never easy. Well, we humanity are the fourth kingdom, governed by the fourth ray, living on a fourth globe, within a fourth scheme, within a fourth everything. So the four multiplies itself over and over and over again. And therefore, we are a humanity that learns through crises. In that way, Scorpio is related to the fourth ray. So it's through the battle, through being a warrior. It is through understanding the human condition, and it is through trying to come to a place of harmony and triumphancy, which is basically in Scorpio the light or the soul. In that way, it's fourth ray. But all those other negatives and positives that are particular to Scorpio do not necessarily apply to the fourth ray. So if someone has a fourth ray personality or a fourth ray on the mind, all those other things are not necessarily part of their makeup. Does that help?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
Okay.
So Scorpio is actually has an effect, or other rays are playing through Scorpio in the
Well,
human condition.
through the human condition, the human the way humanity moves is fourth ray. But of course, the other rays play out as in their ruling planets. We always have to include the ruling planets. So you have Mars, and Mars is sixth ray. You have Pluto, and Pluto is fourth ray. I'm sorry, first ray. What did I say? First ray. So sixth ray and first ray, neither one of them are really soft and gentle rays. Neither one of them is about beauty. See, it's all about energy, dynamism, power, and the power comes through the need the Scorpio has to have in order to deal with all its crises and all the things it needs to deal with. It needs to have that energy and that power to delve down and then come back up again.
Can I ask
Yeah,
a
that's
question?
good.
Okay. Yeah. As I
I
said,
have a question.
yes, please do.
Could you take a little bit deeper look in as a Scorpio, as perhaps a person on have arrived at the third degree initiation, or even a fourth degree initiation? What would a Scorpio? You mentioned strength and all that, and courage, but could you go more in depth as to what?
Well, okay,
That
again,
means, right?
what do we know of some of the more positive goals for Scorpio? Scorpio wants to unearth that which is hidden. Well, a fairly evolved Scorpio would really help another do that. It would help another go through their own depths because they themselves have done that. It would spend a lot of time on research and maybe bringing more material available to someone so that they can then know and learn and then that bring greater understanding for another person, because it can delve as a researcher into a lot of things, or as a scientist it can bring to light a lot of discoveries and a lot of things. Scorpio, a fairly evolved Scorpio, can basically, it's the point of all of our growth is service in some capacity. If someone has already had their transformative initiation, the third degree, then they are pretty well working with ways in order to help humanity, service. And if the person has a strong, strong Scorpio, then they would use the Scorpio qualities to help the other person or to help others. Scorpio can be, life for most people is deceptive. It's not clear. Well, the one who is fairly evolved in Scorpio can try to bring greater clarity to another person. Again, through understanding their problems, through helping them deal with their emotions or their fears or their lack of uh, understanding about themselves and about life. So it's always with the idea of serving humanity. A fourth ray in Scorpio would be so much involved with some ways of service for humanity. So I would take all of that and look at the person's life, and in what way is this person bringing greater understanding, greater knowledge in helping other people.
Yes, that helped. Thanks.
Okay.
Eva,
Yes.
I'd like to also add that after you've taken the third initiation, the fourth, and the fifth, you've integrated your chart. We're told that masters have all signs represented in their chart. All of us have all 12 signs, but some of them have planets in them and some of them don't.
Right.
And we're told that a master has all of them represented in his chart. We're also told that masters are able to stand at the hub of the cross. So they've balanced the opposite of Taurus and Scorpio, for instance. They've also balanced the opposite of Leo and Aquarius, and they stand at the center of that fixed cross, balanced, fused, and working with the energies of all of it together in a integrated manner, and not only of just the fixed cross, but of the other crosses too. At least that's my understanding of the higher use of these particular energies.
Right. Right. So that would be, closer to fourth, fifth degree.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good points here. Thank you. Other comments, points? You see, everything brings on more discussion. So feel free to create this dynamic where people can share and ask questions, because that in a live environment, that's what spurs on more discussion about something before I start moving on to something else. Okay. So we'll move on to Sagittarius. Oops. Okay. So Sagittarius, that would be the 9th sign. And you see the arrow there as part of its glyph. And when we look at this arrow, if you knew nothing about Sagittarius and you looked at this arrow and the way and the direction that it is pointing to, you would come up with words to associate with that arrow. And why don't we open this up? Why don't you come up with words? Because I promise you, if you do, you'll know the sign so much better. So this is a free-for-all. What does that make you think of when you see an arrow pointing in that direction?
Well, I think of aspiration, of aiming for an ideal.
Right. How right are you? That's excellent. We see that it's upward pointing. It's an arrow. An arrow has automatically a direction associated with it. And so it's upward as opposed to downward. Now, there's this crossbar there. What about the crossbar? Any thoughts on there?
Does that mean the cross of the earth? Has that got something to do with it?
It could very well be, because its esoteric ruler is the earth. Very, very good. See how just bouncing things around gives you automatically insight into the sign.
Well, to me, it looks like a phallus.
Like a what? I'm sorry?
Phallus?
Can you explain what you're saying? Because I'm not getting it.
Male figure?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, got it. Yes, for sure. Very much so. Almost like Mars.
Right.
One of the things we will learn about Sagittarius is it shoots its arrows, and the arrows are upward moving. Well, if its ruler is the earth, and the earth is grounded and it's about stability, the horse, which is the symbol for Sagittarius, is an animal that runs and can even run over a cliff and not stop. I mean, it's so one-pointed and directed. That's why many times they have blinkers on them so that they don't get distracted. They can move in that straight, direct way. Well, as I see this crossbar, it's almost like I want to go, whoa, and pull it back down. You see, I want to pull it back down and bring that which has been reached, that which has been attained, the goal, the higher idea, whatever it is, and bring it down to earth to ground those ideas. Can we see that in that glyph itself? You can see all of that. Okay, so let's look at what this is. It's mutable, and mutable means it's flexible, it's changeable. It is governed by the sixth ray. Actually, it's got several rays, but the sixth ray is the most prominent ray. And what is the sixth ray about? It's about the ideal. It's about devotion. So the ideal is somewhere up there. It's somewhere high, generally speaking. We have an ideal and we want to go for it. So it shoots its arrow towards the goal. And that's why many times it is associated with vision, visionary, goal-oriented, idealistic, straightforward, shoots arrows of truth, looking upward to that goal. Now, the ideal is up there, so therefore many times through our society, what is ideal is that which is pure, that which is supposed to be the truth, and that tends to, or has in the past been religion or higher learning, or esoteric learning, occult learning like we're doing. All of those areas are categories that are considered teachings or learnings that are supposedly higher and purer and more to do with the truth. It is ruled exoterically by Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter is associated with the second ray and with expansion, with abundance. And therefore, if you add that to the vision, the going for the goal, and you add the whole idea of abundance to that, there is such an optimistic approach to Sagittarians. Very, very optimistic. They love the search and the attaining the goal of whatever it is, and therefore that brings with it a freedom loving, broad-mindedness, which is associated with Jupiter. Very broad-mindedness, generosity, because Jupiter is so abundant and large. And as I said, religious and scholarly, and this is a fire sign, and fire brings automatically with it passion, exuberance, excitement, fun. Now, the horse has always been the symbol associated with Sagittarius. In the olden days, well, way back, it was the centaur. The centaur is half man and half animal. So it still has animalistic qualities to it, but it's already, you see, the man and the horse are one. So it hasn't yet separated the urges of desire and the urges of the animal from the human being. The horse has also been associated with athleticism and thighs, and therefore it rules the thighs. And people with a strong Sagittarian energy love adventure. So they'll go and love the experiences associated with adventure, freedom loving, and so on. Some of the weaknesses associated with that is that this optimism can be blind optimism. With Jupiter, the ruler, there's so much exaggeration associated with Sagittarius, exaggeration. And because one is so optimistic, one tends to never be on time because it'll work out. I'll get there. Doesn't matter. It'll work out just fine. So there's a recklessness. There is many times a lack of restraint, holding back those arrows are really, really hard. So there's a lack of restraint. And that, with the sixth ray, can lead to fanaticism. Because of the optimism, there can be procrastination because things will work out. It'll get done. But therefore you put it off because it'll get done. There's a certain kind of speed associated with Sagittarius because the arrows move fast, they shoot fast, so it can lead to impatience, to being pushy and being hot because of the fire. It's a fire sign. Hot-headed, pushy, like a little forceful here, just like that arrow that's forceful looking. Yeah, self-indulgent is another word associated with Jupiter. Let me see what else we have here before I move on. Okay. So Jupiter will broaden our scope or our sphere of influence, give another larger perspective. This can lead to philosophy, a sense of truth, higher learning, metaphysics, and theology. Some of the downside of Jupiter is that it can be too much. Depends what it's like in your chart. So too much Jupiter is just too much. Too much of anything is never good, even if it's a good thing. So it'll inflate whatever it's next to in the chart. Exaggerate, inflate, be extravagant. Now, this optimism associated with Sagittarius leads to good fortune, to gambling, to many times have vision, and therefore gambling a lot has to do with vision, joviality, joyfulness and hopefulness, and we need that, don't we? We need to be hopeful. That's why I think we have jovial Santa Claus as one of the little images here. Good-natured and friendly, beneficent, expansive. Second ray, so it applies love wisely and wisdom lovingly. It can lead to group consciousness. What is the keynote? Is it in the next one or is it? Yes. I see the goal, I reach that goal, and then I see another. So I think that's self-explanatory. I see the goal, I reach that goal, because there's always something else on the horizon, always something else.
Could you go back to Jupiter?
Sure.
Thing, I was copying some of the words, I missed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
See, with Jupiter, because of its beneficent and abundant energy, we might not see the tendencies of too much as negative, and therefore we might overindulge in them. We might also rationalize that these qualities and we use them then to excess. The qualities minimally are tendencies of the sign in which Jupiter is found. So wherever your Jupiter is, whatever sign it's in, I would look at what are the qualities of that sign that I exhibit a lot of, maybe even too much. Again, it depends if it's next to another planet. So Jupiter has the broadest magnetic field of all the planets. Therefore, it broadens our scope, it broadens our sphere of influence, and brings, therefore, a broader perspective to the mind. This develops into philosophy, like we said, or our sense of truth. Now, you notice that it's our sense of truth. It doesn't mean it is truth. It is our truth, or the truth as we perceive it. Higher learning, which we've covered, metaphysics and theosophy and religion. And jovial comes from I think it's Latin Jove, which is another name for Jupiter. One of the things about Sagittarius is that it's a fun, loving energy. So if you know if you know Sagittarians, they like to have fun and they're fun to be with. They don't always take life very seriously. And that's why That's why they need to employ the esoteric ruler, which is the earth, which is grounding, which is taking these wonderful ideas that are up there, the goals, the ideas, the ideal, and bringing them down to earth, bringing the teachings down. Many Jupiterians many Sagittarians, I keep mixing up the words, with strong Jupiter make excellent teachers. They can take the teachings, which is so much associated with Sagittarius, and bring them down to humanity in a way that is grounded and understandable. In most charts, the Earth, let me go down to the Earth, which is, I think, our next, in most chart, the Earth does not appear as a glyph for you, although it is always opposite to our sun. If you were to pinpoint it, it's directly opposite to our sun in our chart. The Earth is a planet of manyness because you just have to look at the plant kingdom. Therefore, its diversity thrives upon our Earth. So Earth in our chart speaks of how we are and are not selective and where we need to learn to be. Selectivity becomes a way by which we ground ideas and project and thus manifest them into the world. It requires one to use one's mind. The sign of the Earth speaks of the specific qualities that we need to ground and how that will play out in our life and wherever it is in the chart, whatever house placement it's in, will tell us where in our life it needs to play out. So I think that's all on Sagittarius. I don't think it's that complicated a sign to understand, unlike some of the other ones. So any thoughts or questions on Sagittarius?
Yes, Eva, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
On the Sagittarius slide, you've got a picture of what looks like a pilot with an aircraft in
Yes.
the background.
Yes.
So I guess that it rules air travel, does it?
It's more for the adventure. It's more for the
Oh, I see.
adventure, the trying something out, and with that aircraft, it's the goal. We as you know, we went into space and we did all kinds of things through that ability to be adventurous and move forward.
Yeah, it's just I have a friend who's a Sagittarian, and he's spent a lifetime trying to get a private pilot's license, and now he's flying quite he's getting on a bit, but he's still flying, and that reminds me of him, that picture. Yeah.
One of the things I didn't mention, that I'm glad I went back to the slide here, is there is one picture here of the man separate from the horse. Now that's the more advanced depiction of the personality and the soul. In other words, the individual, the animalistic nature that was part of man at one time as a centaur, is now separate. The man is actually sitting on the horse. In other words, he has a certain amount of control over the animalistic tendencies. And now, as a personality, an integrated personality, he can control those lower desires. So we see that. And then I think there was even depictions of the arrow on its own. Or well, I was going to say there it is, but we have this in all of them, where the arrow, the man is using the arrow on his own without the horse at all. That would be the next level. So the idea of the white horse, which isn't here, this is a black horse, is the idea of the night, the night, was it the shining knight on his white horse? That's very Sagittarian. It's very hopeful. It's very optimistic. It brings to mind hope. It brings to mind, something very positive. Pegasus here, I believe, is also associated with Sagittarius. And higher learning, that's the other depiction down below. See, higher learning is associated, higher maths, higher learning associated with Sagittarius. Okay? All right, unless there's more questions, we'll move on to Capricorn. So on all of the glyphs, we can arrive at pretty good understanding of what the sign is about. Capricorn is one of the few that we're told is not the end yet. This glyph is an interim glyph because humanity is still not ready to receive, maybe from the rain cloud of unknowable things, the glyph that is associated with Capricorn. So this is an interim glyph, and we do the best we can with what we have. Capricorn is earth. At one time, it was associated with the sea goat as the symbol, and now we look at only the goat as being able to climb to the highest peaks, very sure-footed, very conscientious, and industrious and ambitious. To do that kind of climbing requires a tremendous amount of ambition and sure-footedness. It's cardinal, so it's got activity. It's got a certain amount of will associated with it, and it. Anybody that knows, I didn't give you all the rays for Sagittarius. Besides the sixth ray, it also conveys the fifth and the fourth, and that's why we had also the scientific discoveries in there, and then the fourth with humanity. See, one of the few places that the Tibetan has given us 3 rays for a sign. It's unusual that he has given that to us because most of the time it's 1 or 2 and 3. And all the signs do have 3 rays, just like we have 3 positions, the personality, the soul, and the monad or the spirit self. Well, the same thing can be said of these constellations or signs. They too have 3 different levels. So with Capricorn, we have the 3rd ray, which is most prominent. We also have the 1st ray, and we have the 7th ray. And we see a real close relationship with its opposite, which is Cancer, that had the 3rd and the 7th rays, didn't have the 1st ray. And they're opposites. And eventually we must learn to integrate, stand between the two, and work with both energies, the opposites as well. So what can we say about...
Would you tell me again?
I'm sorry,
Would you say the rays again for Capricorn?
The rays of Capricorn are 3, 1, and 7. Now, some of the strengths associated with Capricorn, based on its ruler, and its ruler is Saturn, would be... Saturn is a hard worker, and we will find that in Capricorn, Saturn plays all 3 positions. Saturn is the ruler exoterically, Saturn is the ruler esoterically, and Saturn is the ruler hierarchically. And we had the same thing with Leo. Leo's ruler was the sun in 3 different positions. The sun, however, veils. We spoke of that, right? We spoke of the fact that the sun and the moon always veil. So you have to see what it is that it veils. With Saturn, it doesn't veil anything. Saturn is just such a potent and powerful planet that it is a very important planet for us because it is our teaching. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. So some of the strengths of Capricorn are that it's extremely disciplined, it's responsible, and conscientious. There's a seriousness associated with Capricorn. The power it has to survive and achieve. It's highly motivated. and therefore it will achieve. If you want to be successful, you will be successful because energy follows your thoughts. Energy follows your train of thought. So if this is what's on your mind, success, you will be successful. And Capricornians like to be successful. They push themselves to that success. It can be, now again, conventional because of the seventh ray and the fact that it is Earth. It tends to maybe not take chances, like Sagittarius, being a visionary, will take a lot of chances. Capricorn, even though a lot of business-minded people find themselves with a strong Capricorn, it's not as easy to be that risky. And then I say that, and at the same time, I want to contradict that because a lot of business people end up being very, they take a lot of risks, and they do, in business, they do take a lot of untried and true ways in order to be successful. But it's always with the idea of calculated risks, and that's what is a Capricornian quality. They're practical. So again, the practicality and the realism has to work in there. They can be quite economical. And on the higher turn of the spiral, they're very conforming to the highest law and will. On the lower turn of the spiral, they can be very dominant, very unforgiving, and scrupulous. And scrupulous in the sense of stepping on another in order to be successful and achieve. That takes a lot of it takes a lot of chutzpah to do that, to step on another in order to achieve. They can be cold, status seeking, overambitious, and judgmental. With Saturn as its ruler, can be quite the taskmaster. And again, there's the rigidity many times associated with Capricorn, with the earth, and with that strong quality to it that leads it to be quite inflexible and quite the taskmaster. Materialistic, yes, yes, yes. Isolative, like Ray 1 can be quite isolative. And of everything in the zodiac, it can be considered the most crystallized of all of them. We will look at the keynote a little later. I think it's more important right now to look at Saturn. Saturn, it was the gods of the Jewish people in the Old Testament. And this god was the god of retribution, very much associated with the law and following the letter of the law. Very Saturnian. I believe that Jehovah was the Saturnian quality as was seen and understood in the Old Testament, and that would have been Saturn. Saturn is also associated with time, Father Time, and with the bony structure in the body. Saturn was known as Chronos to the Greeks and was considered Father Time. Time for most people is a constraint, something that has to be worked within. And time, as we know, has its limitations and binds us to being responsible within set structures and paradigms. Saturn represents the father figure for many, many of us, the father or the parent who wears the pants within the family. And so when we look at it in a chart, it's not always the male. It represents authority, most often the authority external to us, such as employers, supervisors, rules, regulations, laws, or it can be a mentor, a teacher, or the one who's the disciplinarian. Saturn is not just a personal planet, but transitions into a wider consideration within oneself. So Jupiter and Saturn create this middle ring around the sun in their orbit. So you have the personal planets, which is up to Jupiter. Then you have Jupiter and Saturn, and they're considered the transitional planets. And then beyond Saturn, you have the outer planets, which are the transpersonal planets. So they have a foot in both worlds, both Jupiter and Saturn, the mundane and the totally personal, as well as the transpersonal and the metaphysical, which eventually will lead us into spiritual. For those who respond well to Saturn, Saturn is about the will, and Saturn is also associated with the mind. So that will can strengthen the mind, it can bring balance into the mind, and it can calm passions. Materiality is associated with Capricorn, so Saturn can bring clearer understanding of material values. For those that aren't easily influenced by Saturn, they look at it as a malevolent planet and brings sorrows and suffering and affliction. And I personally do not like that approach to Saturn. I know that in traditional astrology it's considered that, but when I have talked at various conferences, I've tried to impress upon people that Saturn is our teacher. And Saturn does not have to be looked at as malefic. It can be looked at as imposing upon us the discipline that is necessary in order to grow and to thrive. You see, Saturn has these rings around it. And what do rings do? Rings constrain, they limit us, they confine us. Well, if they act as a playpen, so to speak, we are within that playpen. And the purpose of being within that ring pass not is in order to learn our lessons. And so we go round and round and round, ray 3 of Saturn, round and round and round, until we do learn those lessons. And then we're tested. And no sooner are we tested, we either succeed or we don't succeed. And when we do, that ring expands. Doesn't totally disappear, but it expands. But then there are so many other rings, that keep us limited and keep us constrained until we get it, until we learn. If we don't learn, then it keeps repeating and repeating itself, the lesson to be learned, until we do. And that's why it's called our teacher. So if we move along to the next one, here we see Saturn as the ruler. You see the hardness of the sign, the crystallization that can be here. Down here is Father Time with an hourglass in his hand. And this is the sea goat that at one time was very representative of Capricorn. Now, Saturn is also the spiritual or the esoteric ruler of Capricorn. So let's look at how Saturn will play itself out as an esoteric ruler. Well, through hardship and through endurance, we grow, right? Through hardship and endurance, we improve ourselves. It does bring discipline into our lives and a practical approach and moderation, right measuring of resources and of time and of energy. Through Saturn, we become accountable for our actions. That's the testing. We become accountable. It makes us responsible. And so therefore we gain wisdom through those experiences. Some of this we've already covered. It always conveys the laws on all levels. Such is the teaching, the difference between self-will and then the greater will of that which we are a part. So Capricorn, see if I have any more slides here. No. Capricorn is the 10th sign. And 10, if you sum up the 1 and the 0 of the number 10, you get 1. Capricorn is important in the sense that it represents the sign in which initiation takes place. It's very much associated with the third initiation, the mountaintop experience. And we see the mountain here. We see the mountaintop. And so often the depiction of Moses is the third initiation depiction. How Moses climbed up to the mountaintop, received the law, Capricorn, right? Became transfigured when he came down, according to Cecil B. DeMille. His figure, his face was totally transformed. He now shone and gave off tremendous amount of light. So Capricorn is so much associated with initiation. Do all the initiations take place in Capricorn? It's hinted that it is. Does it actually happen that way? I don't know, but that's the impression we are given, that Capricorn is associated with initiations. Yeah, so that's something that we can look forward to, but never with the goal that that's what we want, that we want the initiation. So any questions thus far on what we've covered with Saturn and Capricorn? I'm looking at the time, and this will be the last sign that we will do today, and then we will finish the other two signs and some other stuff the next time around.
I have a question.
Sure.
You just said that this sign is associated with initiation. What do you mean by that? Is it your rising sign, your sun sign, or what?
It's not the sign that's necessarily in your chart. There's constantly transits. There are constantly in your chart, things move because time passes. So what is on the ascendant now is not necessarily what is going to be there for your entire life. That changes. The moon changes every 2.5 years. Your sun sign changes every 30 years, depending on the degree of your sun sign. So if you were born with a sun in a particular sign at 22 degrees, and there are only 30 degrees in a sign, generally at the end of 8 years, you would move on to another sign. So signs change throughout a lifetime. And many times a transit will trigger off something that might be associated with Capricorn if and when you or one goes through an initiation. So it's not that easy to say black and white that it depends on what's on your chart. Yeah?
Okay, I'm still lost, but go ahead.
Well, just the fact that one is born in Capricorn or has Capricorn moon or Capricorn rising has nothing to do with the fact that one can experience initiation through Capricorn, because many different things line up in different ways as we move through life. And if one is to go through an initiation, one will find that there is something that relates to Capricorn. Suffice it to know that the Tibetan has offered us this information, that Capricorn is associated with initiation, but we should just not jump to the conclusion that just because we're either Capricorn sun, moon, or ascendant, or we have a bunch of planets in Capricorn, that has anything to do with initiation. Initiation has to do with where we are at in our point of evolution. And they say you are initiate before you're initiated. Therefore, you need to move, act, and behave in such a way as if you were already that initiate. And so, through the way you are, people will recognize who you are. So your behavior, your way of being, the amount of light that you give off, the service you give, all that reflects where you're at. And so initiation will happen as we continually work on ourselves, improving our line with soul influence. we call that the antikrana, improving our behavior in the world that's in step with how much soul energy we can at any time radiate. So all these factors lead to initiation. And of course, there are initiations that lead up to the third initiation. The first one is about the initiation that has to do with our physical form. And so many of us, the Tibetan has told us, have gone through that, and it's under the threshold of our understanding and remembrance. But it gives you a certain measure of control upon the physical plane, where one doesn't succumb to licentiousness, to certain addictions, to the physical plane life does not control the individual. The individual can control the physical plane life. And many times, one can consider that athletes that go to the Olympics and the discipline that is necessary and the physical body form and control that is so necessary might be an indication of a first, that they're going to be undergoing or are undergoing a first initiation because of the physical form and the emphasis, energy, and control that brings about. The time span between the first initiation and the second initiation is tremendously large. I mean, we go through hundreds of lives in between where we're trying to bring the next level, which is the emotional level, under control. Not suppress, but control. So it doesn't control us. And again, we see that in people's behavior. And so the second initiation is about the control of the astral plane and our own emotions. And the same things would apply there. To what degree do we control them, or do they control us? And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask, I'm thinking that somewhere I read that we're going to be going through initiations as a group.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so individually with our signs, and we're studying our charts and everything, is that group going to consist of people that are lined up on Capricorn somehow?
No. It's going to consist of people that have reached a certain point in their growth, and we will be undergoing instead of individual initiation, which was of the past, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The standards have gone up as we've become a lot more mentally focused, and initiation in the future will be group initiation. It's group initiation now anyway, only we don't remember that it is. So group initiation will be the way in which we are initiated, and everything has to line up, and it does eventually as is needed. As is needed. Initiation can happen in this lifetime, next lifetime, 10 lifetimes from now. Who knows? All we can do is not think in terms of initiation, but at the same time, work and develop and grow in the light of the soul. And do everything that is possible to be soul, infused. And if we do, the other will take care of itself. Just like the chakras do not need to be manipulated. They don't need to be focused on. They will take care of themselves as we take care of the things that we need to do. Now, group initiation, a lot of the books that the Tibetan has given us talk about group initiation and teach us how that will look, what that will look like in the future. And we still have a long ways to go as a humanity. Now, as a humanity, we are reaching a critical mass where we are told that humanity is ready, will be ready shortly. What is shortly? Is it 50 years? Is it 100 years? Is it at the turn into the Aquarian age? What is shortly? But humanity will be ready for its first initiation en masse, which means a huge, huge number of people will go through those doors of initiation, where there will be more lighted beings, for them to have much greater love on the physical plane life. And it's only the first initiation. So we still have a ways to go, but humanity is much more conscious than they ever were before. So we see progress.
Okay, but I still have a question.
Yep.
How does this astrology chart with an individual line up with a group that are going to take initiation?
It doesn't. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with the group that's going to take initiation. The individual chart is for the individual to know what energies affect him or her and what to expect as certain confluence of energies come together. The past being the moon and what qualities we have in abundance. The present being the sun, how we can make this sun the best that it can be. And the ascendant is the energies we need to bring into ourselves so that we can be the best sun that we can be. Shine like the sun. So, what our individual chart does for us is it gives us a bit of a roadmap of what we have to work with. You know, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and that you need to always combine with the rays, your own ray chart. Try to know your rays as best as you can because you can't do one without the other. But
Does a group have a astrology chart?
maybe within hierarchy, and maybe the group initiations are not all with incarnated individuals.
Okay.
How's that for another thing to think about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, we have no way of knowing by looking at a chart if there's going to be an initiation. So, and there's no, but one thing that we do need to do is we need to try to look at ourselves as objectively as we can, to know ourselves, to know really where we're at, not to answer to anybody and not to fill one's ego to say, oh, I'm a such and such a degree, or I'm such and such a degree, as many theosophists did in the early turn of the century, but to be as honest. And a lot of our questions that we ask in the Moria Federation as you proceed have a lot to do with becoming introspective. And in that introspection, it asks you really to assess where you're at. And it gives you tools to do that with. And that's so important in this work that we do, because you need to know what you're working with. You really do. How do you know what needs changing if you don't even know what it is that needs changing, you know? So in the Moria Federation, I am just so thrilled to have been part of the whole setting up of the curriculum with Michael and other faculty members. That wisdom has come together to allow for this kind of internal questioning, the subjective questioning to get people to arrive at where they're at. But again, the focus should never be initiation.
I just finished the book, Initiation, Human and Solar.
Right.
And so I've got all these
You've got all
initiations.
that. Yeah, I know. It does something to the brain. I remember early on when I started reading this, and all there was this talk on this initiations, and it really got me thinking only initiations, initiations, initiations. However, once you kind of accept the fact that there are that there is a hierarchy, there are initiations, there is a plan, there is a forward moving, if one wants to, you can move forward and not think about that in the same way. It becomes background.
Where do we go from here as far as our study on astrology?
Well, I will be offering another session. We'll finish that up, and some other things that I will be offering. And then I believe that Elena, who is a very well-versed esoteric astrologer will often offer rather a webinar that will be open to faculty as well as students for many more in-depth astrology for those that are interested. I'm not seeing that there's that many people that are all that interested in this astrology to give them the background. I mean, if I look at the number of people that have arrived, it's not that many, unless they look at it after they receive it. You know, I have no way of knowing that. But this is the basic esoteric astrology information that we need to just move forward and to answer the questions that we ask
This
of
is
you.
the level I need.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad I'm filling a niche that needs to be there. Yeah, so that's good. So thank you very much for questions and for input. And if you have any more questions, feel free to contact me. I'll be very happy to address them. And I invite everyone to do that. So I'm looking at the time. It's 10 to 6. Well, for me anyway. And so I appreciate everybody being here. And yeah, thank you very much for your offerings. And BL, thank you for helping me out.
You're welcome. And goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for taking your time with all my questions. Appreciate it.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night.